Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here again. I am Christi Idavoy, Polestar Senior Faculty and the Faculty Manager for the United States. So for Polestar USA, Faculty Coordinator. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Polestar and Brent, for trusting me with the webinar. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. And and thank you so much for being here today. Today we are talking about connecting, or the mind, body, and spirit connection. Um, it's a huge topic, as usual, right? All of our topics tend to be massive, and I love this webinar that allows us to dive in on all of these things that really interest us. And I'm just coming off of the energy of our US faculty meeting, which was an incredible 5 days we spent together in North Carolina. And yeah, so grateful to be a part of this Polestar family and international community. Yes, the pictures from the retreat. Well, the pictures were beautiful. The experience really was beyond words. Hard to put words on these kind of experiences. They're so special, and really just reminded how powerful it is to come together in person. It's amazing. And then these virtual spaces allow us to just keep the connection and keep that energy alive in our hearts. So um, fantastic. Yeah, I would love to invite us all to just pause for a second wherever you are. And if you're driving, please don't close your eyes, or operating any kind of heavy machinery. If it's not appropriate to close your eyes, then don't. But if possible, just take a moment to close your eyes and feel where you are in space. Bring your awareness to the parts of your body that are in contact, either with the chair, the floor. Just take a slow and full breath to really feel your presence in the space in your body. And just feeling the grounding and settling effects of a long exhale. And we'll just do that 2 more times together. Inhaling slowly and fully. And exhaling to feel the weight, the pull of gravity, the comfort of arriving in the present moment. And then we'll open our eyes and come back into this space to have a conversation of sorts about connecting this idea of mind, body, and spirit. So if we go back and we think about Joseph Pilates, again, which is our guiding thread, is really the energy, the being, the consciousness, the body of work that unites us all in this space. And we think of Joseph Pilates' definition of contrology, and it's coordination of mind, body, and spirit. Um, and so, something that I tend to tell the students, and just remind myself always, is this the unity, right, of all three, and how intellectually we can talk about them separately, but in our experience in life, I can't leave my body sleeping in and then show up with my mind and my spirit anywhere, right? So wherever we go, there we are, and we're always whole. And that was the three guiding principles that Joseph Pilates wrote about: whole body health, whole body commitment, and breath. And so this idea of whole, WHOLE, of entirety of this whole thing, is really about unity. It's really about the experience that we have when these aspects of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, are coordinated, or they are aligned. We're really talking so much about what does it mean to be in alignment? What does alignment look like? Not just in our physical body, but in our relationships, being aligned with ourselves in any given moment. Yeah, being in alignment with the circumstances that surround me. What does that look like? How does that work? And so basically, and as I was preparing for this conversation, I was really appreciating how poetic it is, because it really is the space or the realm of metaphor, right? Where we can see, if we choose to, we can pause and see how many of our cues when we're working with the physical body are also quite poetic, in the sense that they have a meaning outside of just working with the physical body, right? So if we think about starting from the bottom up, if you will, right? So if you've gone through the Polestar teacher training, you know that we have a recipe for how we design programs, whether it's one 60-minute class or we're designing a program that might go on for 6 months for someone. We start integrating from the feet up, right? So if we think of a seed in nature, before the seed starts to sprout upwards towards the sun, the root system grows. So we can see these metaphors through nature, through architecture and engineering. If we're building a house, well, we certainly start with the foundation. So we start from the body because it's the most obvious or the most dense part of ourselves, right? Like, it's very clear. I might not know how I feel necessarily. I may have trouble knowing if I want, coffee or tea. Do I want a soup or a sandwich, right? So those things where I might not have a moment where I'm really not clear. I don't even know what I feel. I don't know what I want, but it's very clear where my feet are in space. So if I just pause and drop into the body and I think, okay, I'm going to start with the body, because I can just feel, look, touch, sense, right? We can use our 5+ senses to get really clear on the really obvious aspects of ourselves. Which again, the most obvious or denser parts of ourselves is the physical, is the body. Where are my bones? Yeah. How does my pelvis relate to my legs? How do my legs relate to my feet? What are my toes doing? How do my toes relate to my ankles and my knees and my hips? And we work back up. So we work from the bottom up, from the top down, from the sides, right? So we start with the really obvious or the dense part of the self, being the body. And as we start becoming aware of the body, then we can start we're giving the mind, because the mind is a tool. It's a beautiful tool. We're giving the mind something to do, something to notice, something to observe, and then start to ask the questions to the body, right? So we start seeing, when we experience it, it's all happening all at once, right? So again, something that's super important, and that is also something I constantly remind the students as we're going through the course, is that there is this mental place where we intellectualize things and we can dissect them in order to speak about them and get clear on different aspects. But when we're in the experience, whether it's a movement on any piece of equipment on the mat, or it's our life, any part of our life, all of these things are happening at once, right? We're always breathing. All of the principles of movement are happening at once, right? It's always relevant how we're aligned, where we are in space. And yet we can also pull back and think about it as a journey. How do I journey through my body, my mind, and my spirit? How do these segments of myself start relating back to one another? And a second part of what today's webinar is intending to do is to talk about, how do we as instructors facilitate a space where our students or our clients, if you're a physical therapist or a medical professional, your patients, what are some steps, what are some practical things to be aware of, to implement, to explore, so that we facilitate this experience for them as well. Yeah. So always it always starts with us, right? So everything that we share, I can only share what I have, and there's a lot of universal axioms that really encapsulate this concept of like, we've got to fill another cup from a full cup, right? So first, I, as a practitioner, need to be having experiences, and then if I have the intention of sharing them with another, I need to not only stop at having the experience, but then be curious about what just happened. Why was it significant? What did I feel? So having that curiosity within ourselves, it's going to help us have a better relationship and continue to dive deeper into ourselves. And it's from that space of self-inquiry that we can start having and facilitating conversations and experiences with the other, in this case, the other being the client, the student, or the patient. So again, when we're tapping into the body to provide ease of movement, we're using our principles of movement, right? So alignment, coordination, mobility, control, integration, where it all comes together, all of the very many concepts within each one of those principles of movement. And so what we know is that when we are in better alignment, even when we were setting up for today, right? So it was like, well, where should I sit? Where should I sit in this place that I'm in? And if I sit here where I am, the nature of how I've set myself up at the edge of the couch allows my spine to effortlessly, right? It requires a lot less effort to be stacked this way with my feet resting on the earth than if I were to slide all the way back, where I just kind of take the shape of the couch. And that would be really great for a different setting, right? Maybe to watch a movie, but definitely not to come forward to present and be clear-minded and make sense, right? So when my spine is in alignment, when my body is in a more appropriate position for the activity that I'm about to engage in, well, then my thoughts are going to be clear. I'm going to be able to project my voice and my ideas a lot more clearly. And so the spirit is really the piece that comes forth, right? It's like that part of each one of us that makes us unique. And we can see again this beautiful poetry and overlap in our language of the breath being in the spirit, or the spirit being in the breath, where we actually say inspira in Spanish, and all Latin and Italian, it comes from Latin. So to bring the spirit in, inhale and exhale, inspire and expire. Right? So it's even there of where, like, we take the breath in, we're taking the spirit in. And as we exhale, there's a cleansing, literally, right? We're eliminating toxins, CO2 when we exhale. So we can really, if we allow our minds to open and go there, we can really see the metaphor and the parallel between what's going on physiologically and what's going on potentially spiritually, energetically, emotionally. Picking back up on this idea of the breath relating to the spirit. Okay, good. I'm glad that it's so much better. And so in some traditions, I remember in my yoga teacher training so many years ago, Swami Rama lineage, being taught, and not only being taught, but having the experience, because really that's the teacher, right? Our experience is our teacher. And I say that often. And I remember the class that got me a t-shirt that said, feel more, think less, right? Go from the feeling and then the thinking. But this experience of the breath being a bridge. So I know we say the breath is a tool, and it's not a rule. And the reason, I mean, there's many reasons, and I'm sure you guys could all come up with tons of your own reasons as to why, and again, off of your experiences, whether you're experiencing it within your own body or you're experiencing it when you're facilitating movement with someone else. The very many different impacts and information that we can gather and ways we can influence ourselves with the breath, and thinking of the breath also as a bridge that connects the body to the mind. And what that means is, for example, let's say that we're going to do a dead bug exercise or a feet and straps, and we want to coordinate the timing of the movement with the timing of the breath. So we're using the breath in that moment. Again, we're giving the mind a task, which is saying, wait till I begin exhaling to take my legs down and away from center. And as I inhale, I bring my legs back up through center, right? And that's just one example. You can design and choreograph the breath on the movement in so many different ways and get very creative. And again, it's giving the mind something to do. And it's that moment, it's often referred to as a flow state, but it's within those moments where we might have been having a challenging day or felt a racing mind, maybe even like it affecting our heart rate. And we drop down and we literally get down on the floor or on a piece of equipment, which is equivalent to the floor, where we can just let our body weight go. And we start moving and we start feeling. And suddenly the mind becomes present with what the body is doing in that now moment. That is a flow state, right? We come to these flow states when we're doing art, when creators are in their creative moment, right? Which we're all creators. We're all creative beings. When you're dancing, if you're playing music, when you were learning something complex that really required so much presence, and it is a present, right? It is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And you come away from that and you're like, man, I felt so good. I feel so good right now. Like I really feel like myself. And it is those moments of being in the now, by asking the mind and the body to become one, to have that experience of coordination, that Joseph Pilates really talked about, of, he and I completely agree. And I know that Brent and Shelley do too, of this idea that if the world, or when the world, as the world continues to engage in more of these practices that provide moments of union, moments of within myself, the components of myself, we're talking mind, body, and spirit right now. We could even branch those, right? It's like a tree. Each one can have more branches, but we'll just keep it simple right now. When mind, body, and spirit are unified in that given moment, we really feel peace, right? We feel the lightness of being. It really is that gift, and we start noticing changes in life. So I would love to know, and again, you can put it in the chat or put it I guess in the chat would be better, moments where you can identify these flow states that you've had in your life. Because going through and getting clear on what are some of the things that allow me to go, oh yeah, I've had that moment where nothing else in the world seemed to matter. Right. And that, again, idea of like when you're trying to learn long spine or short spine or pelvic press, parakeet, some of these, like there's a lot going on in these, it's why they're higher level exercises, because there's so much going on. When you're first trying to figure that out, it's really hard to think about anything else other than what you're doing. Once you get the hang of it and you really integrate that experience, then you might be able to do it and you can do it on automatic, right? So it's like, thank God that we have that automatic setting. We get there through repetition. So initially, I might not be able to do anything while I'm doing that exercise because it requires so much presence and focus. But as I practice and I practice and I practice, it becomes automated. And so once that is automated, now I can progress, right? It's when we stop progressing, when we just stay in the automated function, that we might experience things like boredom, apathy, like, it doesn't really turn me on so much anymore. It doesn't excite me. I'm not as excited as I used to be to go. It's gotten boring or stale, right? And that happens for all of us, right? Especially when you become an expert in something. So, what are some things that we do to keep it interesting, to continue to provide an appropriate challenge so that we stay engaged? So I don't know if anyone has any other things outside of Pilates that they practice that have provided a flow state for them. And if so, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear what some of those other activities might be. Um, and then we can probably see the connection of how Pilates, right, and the principles of movement even are super related to those other activities that also give us joy and zest and the spontaneous zeal that Joseph talked about. That was really his wish for everyone to experience, to be excited about life, yeah, to really be living in this flow state. So yeah, meditation for flow state is fantastic. Running outside, riding, meditation, yoga, singing. Yes, fully engaged with children. When we drop down and we just allow ourselves to go back there. Um, so rather than thinking of childhood even as a age group, thinking of it as a state of being that we can all tap into that child consciousness. Yeah. Definitely we feel the presence of the unity that we're talking about. I love that. Hiking, walking and gardening. Yeah, exactly. Running. And there's this idea of, oh, Tai Chi, yes, relationship with God. Beautiful. Exactly. Um, becoming, becoming the thing, right? So like in running, let's say you hit a wall and anything that's very, very kind of intense, right? And again, the intensity is personal. So what is intense for me might not be intense for someone else and vice versa. So definitely not making any kind of blanket or assumptive statements that one thing is the same for all of us. But again, it goes back to getting clear on who am I and having grace with where I am and who I am. And when we get into that level of intensity of getting past I'm just going to throw in the towel moment, I just want to stop, I just don't want to do this anymore. And if we just allow ourselves to get through that wall, where we start to just kind of like it becomes us, right? And it's that cycle again of understanding that when we repeat something a lot, we are becoming the thing that we are repeating, right? It's like at first we might not be able to do something until we've done it enough times. That's why practice makes permanent. Right? So, what are the things that we're practicing? How much time are we spending in our flow state? How much priority are we giving to being in this state of connectedness? Right? So that, because again, it's going to start potentially like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing to get more tapped in, to feel more connected. I'm going to do this thing because someone told me it was going to help me get out of pain, or someone told, right? Whatever the motivator is, that's where we start. That's what gets us started. But then as we practice, as we keep on practicing, am I giving that a place of priority in my life? Knowing that the more hours I spend in my day feeling connected to myself, a higher source, which again is playing off of that idea of the breath as the spirit, as the ability to really tune in and feel our internal guidance system. Yeah, it's like when we're with our clients, asking someone might say, I'm uncomfortable, or, express some pain, or and then being very cautious. And I know Brent talks about this a lot, where we don't want to get caught up in the, does it hurt now? And how about now? And how about now? Because we're right, the power of suggestion is great. So asking questions like, is it just different? Is it something that maybe you're just not used to doing it? How many hours of your day would you spend in a position like this? Well, none. Right. Well, no wonder it feels awkward or different or uncomfortable, right? But it's not dangerous, right? Unless it is. And so obviously that's a different conversation. But helping people also, I mean, a big, big, big piece of this is communicating in a way that enables each other, that we enable each other to pause and say, wait a minute, maybe it's not necessarily bad or dangerous. Maybe it's just really different than what I'm used to. I'm in my growth zone. I'm not in my comfort zone. So, can I get comfortable with being in the discomfort or the weirdness of it? Yeah, the awkwardness of it. Um, yeah, totally. So I love this question. Irena, about, when we're taking a class and someone says, inhale now or exhale now, and that challenge of synchronizing the breath with the teacher's breath. So, um, the question is coming from when I'm being guided. So I'll speak to that part of it first. When you're being guided, it's okay, and it's funny how we need to give ourselves permission for it to be okay to not be in sync with the person that is guiding us. Sometimes we can get in sync and make it feel organic, and we can entrain our breath to the one that is being suggested, and then reflect, does this feel forced or not? If it feels like you're forcing it and it's not really integrating with your experience, with your timing, with where your mind is, with all of the many parts that go into any given moment of life, then just let it go. And it's okay. It's always okay for us to honor our current experience. And then again, ask yourself, what is the mindset? What is the intention with which you're doing it? So I know that sometimes I'm in my mindset of, I don't really feel like being told what to do today, and I'm not going to go to class. Or I just can't think of anything else, and I really just want someone to tell me what to do, and I want to be guided. And so, if I'm going open for the guidance, and yet maybe they're cueing it too fast or too slow and I'm running out of breath, adjust it so that it makes sense for you. When you're guiding a class, and again, knowing your audience is super important. So if I'm teaching a mixed level class and there may be concerns about spine pathology, etc., well, then my cueing is going to speak to that awareness, that concern. If I'm teaching a class and that's not a concern, given the population that I'm teaching, and I want to cue the timing with the breath, I'll make a suggestion, and then I'll follow the suggestion with, breathe in your own way. Make this your own experience. Inhale as your leg comes up, exhale as your leg comes down, unless something different feels better, right? Do what feels best for you. So those kind of cues are very, very powerful. And then making sure that we're providing enough time after the cue so that individuals can drop in and observe what does feel best for me. Many times, individuals only experience that kind of a conscious allowance when they come to our classes. So rather than feeling again, and this really was what brought me to Polestar, that moment where I was like, I'm home. Um, the positive movement experience that exceeds expectation. So exceeding expectation, I feel, is like the advanced practitioner. All of us, though, are sharing the same intention of providing a positive movement experience. When we allow each other to simply be as we are in any given moment, we are providing a positive movement experience, as opposed to, you're not breathing enough. That exhale needs to be longer. You should be able to do this by now. Those might be phrases that we use. They may seem harmless. And at the same time, we don't know what people are going through on any given day. So, how can I, and this is like a question for all of us, how can we relay the sentiment of like, I really want to see you growing and progressing? Maybe next week, this will come together for you, as opposed to saying you should already be able to do this. Because what is being said there without words is you're not enough right now as you are. And again, I know that that's oftentimes, I know it's not my intention. And then when I pause, that's why the pause and the going back into what was so good about it? What did I experience that made that difference? That is very, very, very important for movement professionals, for anyone that is guiding someone else internally into their body and their mind, because it's through your own reflections with yourself that you're going to get more in your toolbox. Yeah. Different sizes of screws, like if it were literally a toolbox. The more we do this, the more curious we arrive as practitioners into our own body. And then as teachers, the more we learn from ourselves and the more we learn from our students. So like I mentioned in the beginning, we just came off of our annual faculty retreat, which was very, very special because it was the first time that we were together or able to open the invitation, at least to everyone, since prior to 2020. So it was incredibly meaningful to be able to have the freedom to travel, to be together. And something that came through is, Brent asked, what happens when you stop learning, right? And again, this is a conference that is for the education team at Polestar USA. And Brent always reminds us the minute that we stop learning is when we should stop teaching. And someone raised their hand and said, when you stop learning, you stop living. And I was like, wow, right? That's like really profound. Because then it makes you question, well, what is it to live, to really live fully, to be in this, again, this desire, this hope or prayer that we have for everyone to really be in their best, to really feel the energy of being connected to the sun, to the water, to the food, to the elements, to ourselves, right? To each other, to our clients. So when we're, quote unquote, tapping into the soul of the client, which was what was in the description for today's conversation, first of all, we want to make sure that we're first and foremost, I can't emphasize this enough, that we're tapped into ourselves so that before we work with someone, we are setting our intention. What is the intention for the day? If you can just pause and have a moment. I like to wear sometimes jewelry, all my rings, like every ring has a story behind it, the earrings, like little things that you can, because ultimately something that came through for me years ago was the realization that I was traveling a lot, right? And I like to have an altar. And when you're constantly traveling, you just can't, you don't have what you have when you're at home and you're fixed in one place. So the realization was that I am the altar, that no matter where I go, I come home and into my safe and sacred space within myself. So how do I do this? Well, there's different ways of doing it, different beads. Maybe my grandmother gave me something, so I wear it. Something that allows me to pause and just really get tapped into myself in a millisecond, right? So if we're seeing the years of like 9 clients back to back, 5 minutes in between them, which I don't recommend to anyone, but I did have years like that in New York City. Going to the sink in the bathroom, just connecting, letting the water run, wet your face, like do good, right? So my intention is to do good. My intention is to trust that the person's body knows what it needs to do. Trust the method, right? So set the intention. Intent is very, very, very powerful. We can feel intention when someone says something to you. What was their intention changes the meaning of what they said, right? The words can stay the same, but the intention can change the meaning. So if our intention is to provide these spaces of deep connection, again, the first thing is that I, as the guide of the experience, the instructor, the teacher, I need to be connected. I need to feel present. I need to make sure that whatever is pulling on my mind, pulling on my soul, I can say, I see you. You're very important, but not right now. This is not the time and not the place. I'm going to put you somewhere. I know that you're safe. That allows me to clear the space and show up fully present for the person or persons I'm holding the space for, guiding the class with, right? And then asking questions in your cues. And you could even, if this is new or you're not used to it, and it might be new for the clients, I don't need you to answer this out loud unless you feel like sharing. But I'm going to, give you some open-ended questions and just notice what comes up. What stands out the most? So if I continue to repeat this movement, or again, give them time so that they can have the moment to even notice. That's one technique that works when it works, right? And that's the thing about cueing and context and everything, is that there are no universally good or bad cues necessarily. It all depends on context. Let's say, like going back into the world of New York, where people are coming in and they're coming in from the street where there's so much energy and they're moving really fast in their bodies and in their minds. So I'm going to start them maybe, all right, get on the reformer and just glide back and forth. Meet them where they are. Because if someone comes in and their mind and their body and everything is moving quickly, they're moving quickly through their experience at that moment. And I say, okay, let's just slow down. They're probably going to get frustrated and want to throw something at me, right? So that's a neuro-linguistic psychology. It's one of the first steps that we learn and when we're studying NLP is meet people where they are or matching someone's energy. So when I can match the energy, now there's an open freeway of communication. So it's like, okay, I feel understood because you're matching my energy. So subconsciously, I'm giving them the feeling of like, yeah, I can feel you. I see where you're coming from. Match the energy. And then you can start, then they're going to trust you and you can start taking them through perhaps a different journey, right? If someone says, no, I don't feel it, I don't feel it, make it heavier. Do something that makes it grosser, that makes it denser. And then from there, you can create the contrast, then make it really light. And then you go, whoa, right? So something wakes up in them. And it's those moments of aha, of like, wow, that was really different. Those kind of moments that are unprecedented moments in their life, perhaps because something was different than something else, right? It's in those moments of creating difference, of creating change, that we have this connection feeling, that suddenly that it's like the glimmer of the flow state is there in that moment, right? Were you thinking about any of the issues of paying bills, of the laundry list of things to do? You don't. In those are the moments that basically, you know, in a retreat setting, in kind of turning our Pilates class into a ritual, if we think of it in the way of like, I want to, if it were a thread with beads, and every bead is like a now moment. So I'm threading together, or I'm beading together a series of now moments. And then we have those spaces in between where we're going to go to a different piece of equipment. How do we go to the other piece of equipment? So now I want you to come up to standing. We're going to walk over to the chair and notice what your feet feel like on the ground. So rather than just saying, get up and go to the chair, I just pre-framed it so that I'm continuing to thread the meaningfulness of presence of, I want your mind to do this while we go and do that. That way, I am preventing the mind from escaping the moment that we're in, from escaping the classroom, right? So that's really, really kind of part of the recipe of things to do in order to tap into this space that it becomes sacred because it creates change, it creates meaning, right? Whether something is sacred or not is a choice. And I mean, really, if we're completely honest, right? For some people, something might be really sacred, and for someone else, it's not. I think of like early on, and I can think of Shelley laughing at me, where I saw someone walk on a mat with sneakers on. And I was just like, oh my God, you can't walk on a mat with sneakers on, but apparently you can, right? So not for everyone is the mat this like flying magical carpet space the way that it is for me. So I learned to loosen up a little bit and realize that yeah, it has that meaning for me. Maybe it is meaningful for the person with their sneakers. Maybe their sneakers aren't disrespectful the way they are for me. So it goes back to that other tenet at Polestar. Really important principle is seek to understand before being understood. Can you imagine if we all did that in the world? If humanity remembered that it might not be what they think it is, if we sought to understand before being understood. So that's huge. That's huge. And if we can just take that and start to observe ourselves throughout the day, the moments of reaction, I can't believe they're doing that. I can't believe they said that. How could they think that of me? And the minute that we have that thought going, oh, wait a minute, what were they thinking first? Before I go and I dump all of my judgment and perception on them, and I might do that first, but if I do that and then straight away realize that every time I do that, there's an opportunity to say, I wonder what they were thinking. I wonder what their intention was. Let me seek to get more information about this first, and then try and see if, like, do I understand? And then share, well, this is how it felt for me. So it's very, very powerful ways for us to relate with ourselves even. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I didn't say that. Right? And then seek to understand yourself. Why maybe something you were taught that it wasn't polite to X, Y, and Z, right? So just that, again, that vein of curiosity. And I wanted to make sure on this webinar also to thank. So in our faculty retreat, and again, I keep mentioning it because it's so fresh and it was just so powerful and special. We had the opportunity to share really special cacao. So Polestar, I've been working with Cacao, and some of you that are probably friends offline or we're friends online, either way, have probably seen some information coming through on my end with this cacao from the Bri community, which is the largest Indigenous community in Costa Rica, which is where I live full time. And I had the opportunity of going to Bri last year, which was life-changing. And they speak their original language. They live on their original land that was never colonized, which is another massive conversation I'm not going to get into here, but I am romanticizing it for sure. And it was very, very powerful to be in a different society that is honoring and loving and relating to the earth in the way that they have for what they claim about 10,000 years. And so this cacao that we shared is unroasted cacao, and it was sponsored by Cacao Magic Costa Rica, which will share links and information on this, as well as a paper that I would love to share some new research on cacao. And it's very, very powerful, not only because it's being harvested by Indigenous women in the way that they've been doing it for thousands of years. It's also very special because it's unroasted, so it doesn't have any caffeine. And the medicine in the cacao, the theobromine, being one of the more popular components of it that has gotten a lot of attention from the media over the last, 10 years or so, is very available. So I just want to acknowledge and thank them. And so these are tools, like I mentioned, you might have like an amulet, a piece of jewelry, a little piece of cacao in your mouth, setting up a space. So during the retreat, we created an altar together that had flowers on it. And it's like a corner, a space that is beautiful to look at, that inspires us. Yeah, it reminds us that there is more than just the bones, right, which are super important. So I'm not saying just the bones as if they're any less important than anything else. It's not a hierarchy. It's a spiral. It's a circle. And that's the integration or the integrity of it all, is that you can't have the full circle without all of the pieces. And that is true about humanity. We wouldn't be here. Each person, and I know that's challenging because there are some challenging people, we are all part of this. And I recently heard Dr. Bruce Lipton, and again, we can link to these things, talk about humanity, and he's a cellular biologist. So he's using metaphors that he's discovered from studying cells and then looking at cultural, sociological components. And he said that every single human is like a piece of an eye. So, like, let's imagine it's one huge eyeball. And together as humanity, we have a vision. But each individual is part of this eye that collectively we see. So, really high level thinking, and again, it's not like, oh yeah, it's so easy for me to hold everyone in this light. And but again, it is this question that Brent shared at the meeting too, of like, what would source energy be seeing? Yeah. God, creator, creatress, right? In this Indigenous cultures, God or creative energy doesn't have a gender. It's not male or feminine. It is both. It is an energy that allows us to exist on this plane or in this plane. And I hold a retreat also in Costa Rica. I'm actually doing a very short version of it, a 1-day version of the Earth Sprit Retreat in Miami at the end of May. So if anyone is interested in Miami, it is actually on a sliding scale. So there's a minimum to cover cost, and then people pay what they feel comfortable with. The retreat in Costa Rica is 4 nights off grid, where we're definitely doing the philosophy of Pilates, of experiencing for 5 days and 4 nights, being in a connected state with the elements, with each other. And it's a combination of meditation, movement, journaling, and working with the elements, working with the 4 elements. And a lot of you have expressed interest over the years. If you're new to Polestar, if you're new to the Pilates Hour, welcome. And something that is very special about the community at Polestar is that we really give the mind, the body, and the spirit, again, they're all sitting at the same round table together. So we're not looking at it like a hierarchy of one is more important than the other, but rather understanding how a physical body that is in alignment is going to be a clearer mind, is going to have better organ function, is going to be a spirit that's going to be kind and loving and more accepting, because they have more wiggle room in their body. So it also, when we understand this, allows us to be more compassionate and empathetic with individuals that maybe aren't so comfortable in their bodies, right? So I'm always blown away when I meet someone that is quadriplegic. You know, I've had the honor of working with paraplegics, with quadriplegics, and seeing how their spirits are so bright. And here I am with my legs fully functioning, and and I'm complaining about a hangnail, and again, not to belittle myself and like that really feels pain, but am I really going to let it ruin the whole day, or parts of the day? Or can I have that moment to pause and say, this is really bothering me right now. I see myself going through this. I'm going to take a deep breath. What can I do to interrupt that so I don't go down that rabbit hole and actually let it ruin the rest of my day or my relationships, right? In that moment, in that day. Oh, wow. Thank you, Melissa, who's on the Polestar end. So it's May 26th. She's fast. She probably jumped on my website to look for it. But we are going to send information about the things that I've mentioned. And, and again, compassion. Yeah, compassion, and if possible, even empathy. And empathy is really, walking in the shoes of the other. So, and sometimes we can't. Like, there's just things that it's really challenging to even try and imagine. So can we at least be compassionate, with passion, with feeling? So rather than the minds just coming in and saying totally unacceptable, which again, it's going to do that, and maybe it is. And then can we soften a little bit and say, well, I wonder what happened to them, right? And this is what we ask our students to do. Create the context within which this behavior would make sense, because it's all cause and effect. We started one of the days with a poem, a piece of a poem from Rumi, who's I think 12th century, I might be wrong, something like that, 12th century Sufi mystic poet. So Sufism is the metaphysical aspect, if you will, of a Muslim tradition. There's a word that I'm losing right now, and I'm just going to let it go. But the poem, basically, the piece of the poem that we shared was, beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there. So this is the space in which connection happens, beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing. There is space, there is a place. That is when we can see each other as children, as brothers and sisters that all depend on water and soil and food, right? We are all physiologically having the same experience. How we relate to it is different, but we are made of the same fabric. Yeah, we are all humans. And that's really what we need. We need positive movement experiences to arrive at a critical mass that is in alignment. And we know that we do that one person at a time. And we know that once there's a critical mass, we start to experience really big changes in the collective. So I can't believe we're at the top of the hour. Love them. So suggestions or advice when we're having challenging people, can we just allow them to be where they are? And it's okay. And it's not a reflection on us. What does reflect us is how we choose to respond in those moments of challenge. It's okay if they don't feel it. That's what they notice. Tomorrow's another day. The next time they come in, right? Maybe change them. Be okay, that's interesting. Let's do a few more. That's cool. Not everyone's going to feel it that way. Let's do something else. Put a weight, do something again. Think about the trick is to go from something that's very obvious, bring your shoulders down away from your ears. You've said it 5 different ways. It's not pull your shoulders up to your ears. Now gently glide them down. Notice the difference. So, how do we create contrast and a space to allow those things because they're also there rather than wrong, right, wrong, and right? There's all that other space of there's a lot of ways to look at it, a lot of ways to approach it. Yes, thank you all so much. And, above everything else, be kind. Seek to create a positive movement experience for yourself, for yourself, and then you can hold the space for the other. So we're connected, we're in touch. I wish you all so much peace and love and trust yourself, trust your body, trust the method. We are together in this. And what the world really needs is more down to earth, honest people that can just hold space for all of the things that we don't understand necessarily and trust that there is an alignment that we're all a part of. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Melissa, for all of the behind the scenes work that you do so that this can be a reality. And thank you, Joe and Clara. Thank you all.